Welcome everyone, and thanks for making the time to join us on today's webinar. We have Ben Keating, General Manager of Print and Business to Business Revenue at News Corporation, with us today as our guest. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
I am. We will be discussing what's been happening in newspaper publishing recently, along with some opportunities and tips. We've got about half an hour, so I'll kick off. If you have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the Q&A section that you'll see a button for below, and we'll try to answer as many of these as we can further on in the webinar. And if there's any left over, we'll get back to those individually as well. So Ben, welcome to today's webinar. Really appreciate you making the time to join us.
Once again, thanks for having me, Ben. I'm looking forward to it.
Look, I know it's been a really busy time at News Corp over the last few months, and not all of it's been planned or been things you might have expected, I guess. I know you've had weather events, you've had print plan issues. It's fair to say the team at News Corp have had some real headaches to deal with. Can you tell us a bit about the impacts of that and how you've been dealing with it?
Yeah, Ben, thanks. I think there has overall been four major things that we've had to deal with, especially over the last 6 or so months. Which has given us a few headaches, but in most cases, I think we're making some good progress in fixing those moving forward. The four areas are, number one, around production, and in particular, this is in Southeast Queensland and in Victoria. The other area is distribution, which is predominantly on the east coast of Australia. The third one is the weather events, which has impacted our business. And the last one being the lag impacts of COVID and what that has done. And in some ways, COVID has affected our business more recently than what it did when we were at the height of the pandemic back over the last 2 years. So in terms of production, I suppose I want to give some clarity on why we made the changes. And for those people who don't know, we have changed our production facilities both in Queensland and in Victoria. And the reason we did that was because we still sell in order of about 650,000 papers a day across the nation, which sort of adds up to 244 million a year. And with that, we had two aging plants that weren't meeting the needs of our consumers and what they wanted now, and definitely probably wouldn't be able to meet the reliability going into the future. Most importantly, that one being in Melbourne, where our Melbourne print site had reached its end of life. And that particular print centre couldn't print colour. It could only print colour on certain pages. And our consumers want a better experience while reading the paper. So the business decided that it would invest into a completely new print facility. I suppose this also shows the absolute commitment that News Corp has to print. This new print systems has cost us in excess of $55 million, of which 35 in building it and putting the equipment in, and then 20 or so on the leasing for the future. So a $55 million investment to the future of printing in Victoria. We definitely had some teething problems, as any new press does. And obviously with the impact of COVID and not being able to fly in international specialists who look after the machines, definitely impacted our ability to be able to think fast when these problems occurred on the floor on particular nights. The positive is that we have seen tremendous improvement in the Melbourne facility, and that continues to happen.
Thanks for that update, Ben. And look, I can appreciate, I know I've seen behind the scenes just how hard your team have been working to resolve these issues. I know they're frustrating for our members. They just want to get the product in their stores and out to customers who are, still fortunately, lining up at their doors some days, wanting the product, and we love that. So I think we.
And hey, I'll just quickly speak to the other three areas around distribution, weather, and COVID, because I think it's important to touch on those. As many people would know who have been listening, we had changed our distribution model a couple of years back. So we first did this in Sydney, we did it in Queensland, and we are still doing it in Victoria, where we have moved to a more distributor-focused type model and consolidated the number of agents distributing. This is by no means where we want it to be yet, and we still know we have to do an enormous amount of work to ensure that our papers are getting there on time and in full. But we had to make some of the changes because in certain areas, the amount of handbacks that we were receiving, and sometimes those handbacks with no notice, was leaving our customers in a pretty tricky situation where they wouldn't be receiving the product.
No, thanks for that, Ben. And that's a great segue to my next question, which is, I guess, with some of those issues resolved, what's the sort of key focus for you and your team right now moving forward?
There's no doubt that the key focus, and 100% has to be in ensuring that our product gets produced on time and is distributed on time for all of our retailers. Some of the areas that we've seen over the last number of months, especially on some of the weekends where we have been late, there is no worse customer experience. And I feel for the retailers who often have to take the front of their customers who are frustrated that the product isn't there when they want to buy it. So 100% our focus is on producing on time and in full every day.
No, that's great news. I think it'll be welcome news to all of our distributors and retailers who have been navigating those issues with you. And another question I was going to ask you is, I know you've been upgrading signage on a lot of stores, which is really great news. I think it's really important for our shops to look current and for News Corp's signage to be up to scratch as well. So can you tell us a bit about how that project's going?
Yeah, the project's going really well, thanks, Ben. There is no doubt that some of our signage out there is from a bygone era, and they don't necessarily reflect the way that our brands look now in terms of our brand mastheads and the way that they've been updated. So where possible, we've been working with retailers in certain areas to try and ensure that we can update that external signage on their stores to look and feel like the mastheads they're representing. To date, we've done well over 100 stores, and over the next 30 days, we'll still do another 100 stores. So by the end of August, we look to have about 240 stores completed in an upgrade to their signage to ensure that it looks and feels the way that the product that they currently sell does.
No, that's great news. I think the retailers that are getting that done on their stores, I know it's not always easy to make the time and to get things organised for that to happen, but it's really worthwhile. I think we all can get a bit store blind sometimes, just focusing on the day-to-days, and it's really good if we can have a good look at the outside of the store and make sure that it's up to scratch. So really appreciate the investment there, because I know that's significant.
Correct. And any questions that retailers have on that, please ensure they reach out to their News Corp representative to have a conversation about what we could potentially do.
Terrific. Well, we might get into the weeds of retailing a bit more now. Can you give members any insights on, what some of the promotions are that are coming up, and any tips you've got for maximising the newspaper category, and what you think maybe are some of the most common missed opportunities you see that, that members could benefit from taking up?
Yeah, Ben, we also always pride ourselves on promotions here at News Corp, and I suppose there are two areas of focus, I suppose, over the coming month or so that we'd be liking newsagents to focus on, where we believe that they could increase the sales of their newspapers, and probably more importantly, ensure that the habit of buying the newspapers daily continues. The first one is our Winner Weekender promotion. We do this around this time every year, and it's definitely one of our blockbuster promotions, where this year we are partnering with Crusader Caravans, and we're giving away in excess of $300,000 worth of prizes, which also include two pretty swanky 2023 RV models as part of the promotion. The promotion will start on Father's Day, which is on Sunday, the 4th of September, and will run for 22 days. Obviously, what we want from our retailers is to make sure they utilise any of the point of sale that they get that. The more that we can communicate that this promotion is on, the more that hopefully customers will get hooked and feel that they want to come back every day to get the code word to ensure that they have more chances to win. The second area of promotions, which we do every year, and it always starts at the beginning of September, is the start of the footy finals era. Most of our papers are known as the footy papers, and it is the key time when customers and consumers really want to read compelling stuff about what their team's doing coming into the final 4 weeks of the year. We'll also do a couple of promotions around that in terms of posters, bumper stickers and so forth, to really sort of get retailers and also their customers pumped up about supporting their local team coming into the footy final era.
Looking forward to it. I think the next one was I was going to ask you about is, we both have really strong relationships with newspaper distributors, and things have been a little bit difficult for them with some of the challenges that we've been talking about, and their businesses have changed a lot. Do you have any specific tips for them as well?
Yeah, distribution is so important to our business, and obviously making sure that any of our news agents are still distributing, making sure that they're getting the right amount of product and it's arriving at the right time. As I said at the beginning of this, I know that we've had some issues over the last 6 months, but those issues are now being sorted through, and people should be able to see an improvement in the time that they're receiving their newspapers to distribute. Please, if you're not, making sure that you get in contact with News so we can work on these to fix the problems, because as I said before, the number one focus at the moment is ensuring that retailers and distributors have the paper at the right time so they can get them out. One thing we do know is that a lot of these distributors are doing it fairly tough in terms of increased costs on their business. And they would have recently seen, and the retailers would see, that we are about to take a cover price increase across our papers. But we've also done an out-of-cycle review of distribution, and in particular, where it's really hurting around home delivery distribution. While I can't announce anything here today, I can say that within about the next 2 weeks, we will be issuing a statement about how we're going to be addressing some of that distributor remuneration.
I think that'll be welcome news to all of our members. They're all looking for that bit extra in remuneration at the moment, as we know costs are starting to hurt. So really appreciate that. That's great news. Can you also share with us any resources and support maybe that News Corporation offer retailers and distribution agents that maybe our members aren't fully aware of, or you'd like to see them take up more often?
One thing that I hope that most people do know is that we do have a dedicated field team. So we employ our own field team that is there to support you and to help you, making sure that you get the right amount of papers and making sure that your shop is set up for success. So if you haven't got an area sales manager seeing you, please obviously reach out to Ben and he can forward your details on so we can get someone out there in contact with you to talk about your business with News. I think the other area, which is a little tip, which not all news agents might know, we do have a program called Prepay and Save. We currently have about 3,000 customers on this nationally, and it's basically where news agents exclusively can give their customers a 20% discount in essence. So every 5th paper, the customer gets free. The way that we do this is via the Blue Shift terminal. So you have to have a Blue Shift terminal to be a part of this. But and if you are interested in being able to give your customers an added value that doesn't cost a news agent a cent, plus we will give you a $5 sign up for every customer that you get onto it, please reach out to Blue Shift, number one, to see if you are eligible for a terminal, and then speak to one of your local News Corp representatives about how we can set your store up to promote the offer, which is something that is only for news agents, and it's a saving every day that no one else in the market has.
Thanks for that. And are there any other new developments, trends or innovations in your business or in retail more broadly that you'd like to share with members? I know you and I have talked before about software investments and driving efficiency for news agents so that they don't need to do as many things when dealing with suppliers. Is there anything happening in that space?
Yeah, I think many of the people on the call would know and probably have the frustrations with our iServices returns portal. It is something that has been with us for a long time and probably hasn't moved with the same rate of technological advancements as it should. But we will be launching a new piece of software called iDeliver. And all retailers will either get a phone call or an email from our customer service team. And over the course of the year, we're going to start to migrate these retailers that we have a direct relationship with across to our new returns portal, which is called iDeliver. The great thing about this portal is it is super user-friendly and not just compatible with your desktop, it's also compatible with all your smart devices. So be that your iPad, be that your phone. And it will also allow retailers to do daily returns entries, as well as they could be able to claim their missed deliveries via the app, claim shortages, claim damaged stock, all with the ease which currently doesn't have in the iServices software. And it will also even allow the news agents to change their drawer and request drawer changes at the ease of just a few clicks. So they can also make sure they're getting the right papers when they have hyper-local activities happening in their community. While we do our best to always ensure that news agents have the right amount of stock, we're not always aware of some of the local festivals or local wine festivals that might be happening in their communities. And this way, when they know that there's going to be an increase of traffic around their store because of these activities, they can bump up their supply to ensure that they're not out of stock while these things are happening.
And sorry, when was that going to be available?
So it's basically just launched now.
Right.
And it will be a rollout that will progressively happen over the next 12 months, where it's not like we're turning off iServices and going straight to iDeliver. We want to ensure that we take the time and the patience to ensure that everyone goes across, feels comfortable about using the functionality of what the app has, and realise that it will not only save them time, it will be easier. Plus, it will also give us a lot easier way to communicate with people about giving them bespoke communication. Before in iServices, if there was a particular area that was basically going to be late for whatever reason, we'd normally have to do blanket emails out to everybody, even if that wasn't being affected in that store. iDeliver will be able to ensure us to make sure that our communication is really, really focused to the handful or the hundreds of retailers that may be affected by anything that comes across.
So moving forward, as we try to improve the situation with regards to, on-time deliveries and things like that, will that become a better portal for them to communicate about, late deliveries or shortages and those sorts of things?
Absolutely, only by the touch of the button. And we're also looking forward down the track, and this will take some time. We would love to get to a point of view where you could even see your distribution vehicle about how far it is away from your store. A little bit like an Uber, when you can see the car and at what time its estimated arrival is. We're looking at some of that functionality so they know if the papers aren't there on roughly what time they will get there.
Yeah, I think that's helpful because I'm sort of looking at a couple of the questions that have already come through. It's around sort of obviously there's still some work to do in improving those distribution times and so on. And I think from a communication point of view, one of the things is how to kind of get ahead of that and make them feel like they understand where they are in the process and when things are going to change. So do you think that portal will enable that process to happen a little bit more focused on their business?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of the major reasons I'm doing it. Like our position is that we would like to ensure that papers are at the store by the time that they open. Now, we know that stores around the country all open at different times, and we have to make sure that we are aware of that. But we know the frustration of the fact that you have locals who normally are there before you open your store in many cases, and they're there for one reason, that is to buy the paper, and how frustrating that is for you and also your customer when we're not there. And in particular on the weekend where we've probably had the biggest problems, where our papers are significantly bigger and the bulk sizes are bigger. And we know that we've have to work harder on the weekends to ensure that our product there is there at the right time. But it is our position that we believe that we should try and be there by the time that you open every day.
No, that's great, and it's that ritual that we don't want to break. So I appreciate that you're working on that. And there's a couple more questions on that, but I'll come back to them afterwards.
Yeah.
It's the other thing I was going to touch on, Ben. You've been involved in our industry think tank sessions that Alna's been hosting since the beginning of COVID. Look, we've been working with a range of suppliers in the industry on issues like resilience, sustainability, how to make our member businesses more efficient, more profitable, and how we can improve industry standards to drive that greater customer engagement. And one of the first major initiatives to come out of that is our new Boost Your Business online industry skills training that we're going to be actually launching this week, which News Corp has kindly supported for members. Can you tell us why you think, that initiative in particular, and I guess initiatives like the think tank, are important for the industry?
I think it's an amazing initiative, Boost Your Business. I think most people might have seen in my bio that I spent many of my year in FMCG. And one of the things I draw parallels to is the independence of what the newsagent is versus sort of the independence of what an IGA supermarket is, in how that they are all forms of the same function, but they're all owned differently and aren't necessarily all set up the same way as some of your competitors out there. So what I think it does is it enables you to be the best that you can be. There are fantastic retailers out there, and there are ones that probably need to improve to ensure that they're not tarnishing the brand of what newsagents are. And this is one of the key things that they found in IGA was how they could keep their top IGAs at the level they were and be really, really proud of that and showcase that, while helping the ones that were probably aren't as performing as well and not showcasing the way that they should be, how they could lift that and make them more consistent. Because as a customer, you want a consistent experience about what you should expect in some of these outlets without taking away the individuality of what these stores are. Because the great thing about the newsagent is the fact that they can be hyper-local and serve their community, and the community wants what they want. But I think the great thing about Boost Your Business, especially if you're a newcomer to the industry, it gives you fundamentals about what your key categories are and how that you should run those key categories, and also better ways in managing your cash flow and managing your profitability, your in-store theatre and your footfall. And I think the more that retailers take the opportunity to learn from, I suppose, the category experts in their in particular categories that they look after, they'll be able to mould some of those insights to what best suits their store and what best suits their local community.
I think so, and I think it's a good example. The IGAs, and some of the IGAs used to be awful, but these days they're generally pretty amazing. And
I actually think the IGA, the good independents, are the best the best outlets in the country, be that in a supermarket or in a convenience or small business.
Yeah, no, they've really changed their businesses, and a lot of that is, takes leadership from the owners, but it also takes a lot of training of the staff to really, see that vision through. So that's what we're hoping to do, and appreciate your support on that. The last question I was going to ask you, obviously we represent lottery agents as well as news agents, and I'm sure you love your lottery agents, but I wanted to ask you, what do you love about news agents or think makes them unique and better than the larger chain stores when it comes to newspapers and so on?
Well, I definitely love them when I win, that's for sure, Ben. Unfortunately, it's not often enough. But I think what I love mostly about news agents, and it sort of layers back to my point beforehand, a lot of the news agents' customers, competitors, are supermarkets, big P&C stores that are absolute cookie cutters in the way that they look and feel. You go into any Woolworths, it looks exactly the same. Whereas the great thing about being independent, you know your community, you know what your local customers want, and you can build a retail experience around that and offer your community what they want and need. And you're also the community hub. It's where half the time you go up and have a bit of a chat about what's happening in the community. The news agents have always been the place where people go to sort of catch up in what's happening in that community and being that leader in that neighbourhood. And I think that's incredibly special and something that we should never lose.
No, thanks. So that's still pretty important to News Corp then.
More than 50% of our revenue and volume go through our newsagent business. So it is our most important and biggest channel.
Terrific. Now, I've got a couple of questions from members. Now, the first one is, with the prepay and save, someone was asking about, is the iPad available to all newsagents, or can anyone access prepay and save?
Yeah, so you can only access it through a Blue Shift terminal, which is in essence an iPad. And I'm pretty sure, Ben, if you don't have the details for Blue Shift, we can forward those to you to get in contact with them. And they can come and install that iPad. And obviously that Blue Shift iPad allows a number of other things to be done.
We won't talk about one of those, but anyway, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. But it does offer another other types of functionality. But we need to have something that is that can put all the information together so we can process it, and that's why it has to run on a third party.
Okay, terrific. And the other question I had is about addressing deliveries of papers to retail outlets who open much earlier, like some outlets that open at 6 a.m. They're asking, could News Corp prioritise their deliveries over outlets that maybe open a bit later? This would increase retail sales. Is that something with the new portal that they can communicate? And there might be a possibility of rejigging some of the delivery routes around, making sure that we get them to those stores that open earlier.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave that for the portal. I would start that with a conversation with News Corp. And for those people to find out who they're, if they can give your information to you, we can get them in contact with their local area sales manager. It is something that we'll always endeavour to make sure that the papers are there when the store opens. The only thing where sometimes it comes into difficulty is that we have to do what we call truck trees. Because we deliver to 10,000 outlets, we can't be zigzagging around the country, or some places wouldn't get their papers until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. But there is some things that we can do around primary and secondary freight, and somewhat times the way that we sequence drops. So it's definitely something worthwhile having a conversation with us, and there is the possibility that can happen.
Okay, I'll pass on the details of that inquiry, and we'll see if we can assist to make that better. Look, thank you, Ben. That's been a terrific chat today. Really appreciated getting an update on everything that's happening. Also appreciate, there have been some challenging times. Not all of them News Corp's fault. Some of them are, just going through that. So I suppose some of those transitional steps with new print centres and so on, and those things always bring difficulties. But I know from my communication with your team, with yourself, that everybody wants to get those newspapers there as soon as possible, and that you're working towards improving that, which we really appreciate. And also want to acknowledge the support on remuneration, because I know a lot of members are looking out for that, and that'll be welcome when it comes through. So thank you for that.
And I want to thank everyone's patience, especially in areas that have been impacted by production or distribution. It definitely is not the way that we want it to be, but I can assure you the reason that we've invested as heavily as we have is because we want to be in the newspaper business for a significant period of time. And for the lease on the current place in Victoria is 10 years. So that gives you some sort of view exactly how much at least we think that we'll be selling newspapers for, that we're committed to 10 years into this lease, and that we are committed to our print product. Although we do have a digital product, which is also important, print still remains to drive the primary driver of our business's revenue. And we want to extend the runway and the footprint of print for as long as we can.
Thanks for that. And it was interesting listening to those numbers, that it is a big investment, and that they are still big numbers that we're selling every day. And we certainly want to make sure that continues for as long as possible. So thank you for your time today, Ben. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who joined us today, and stay safe, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Ben.